It was just another ordinary day with the exception of Daddy having the privilege of picking his little boy up from kindergarten. And he came running up to the door, and I went over to meet them.
Like I always do when I do pick him up, we just give all the materials to my wife, Tanya.
So Dave handed me Jake's things. I looked at what Jake had brought home. It wasn't just his book bag, it was also another book bag. So what I read on the front of the book bag, I was a little perplexed by. I took Jake's belongings on into the kitchen, took a closer look at the additional thing that Jacob had brought home.
Tanya got into this book bag and called me over to show me what one of the books was.
Dave, where'd you get this?
Jake had it at school. Why?
Jake, honey, who gave this to you?
Miss Johnson.
I'm realizing this material has somehow been deemed appropriate to even be placed in my 5-year-old's hands.
What in the world?
It was a book meant to introduce and normalize homosexuality.
This is about introducing to my child sexuality issues at a very early age.
And they teach this in kindergarten?
Even before he's introduced by his parents.
He's just a child, Dave.
I just could not believe that they were doing this in kindergarten.
And I was worried. I didn't know. I didn't know what other discussions had taken place.
What else are they doing in that school?
We decided to email the teacher.
Hey, Tanya, can you read this and tell me what you think?
Tanya and I thought it absolutely necessary to make it clear to the teachers and administrators of that school that it is our parental right to be able to be notified when they're doing this to our children and have the option to opt our children out.
Jake can't even tie his own shoes yet.
The principal agreed to meet with us the following Friday.
I think you're both misinformed. These school materials have nothing to do with homosexuality, but with family.
She basically directed us to a gay, lesbian, straight educational network workshop.
Go to this workshop.
That's entitled How and Why to Talk to Your Children About Diversity.
It'll get rid of any wrong preconceptions you have about what we're doing.
We did not know what we were getting into at this point. The evening came for the GLSEN workshop.
Thank you so much for coming tonight.
When the workshop leader came in the room, the first thing he said was,
I could talk to you about diversity, but tonight I've decided to talk about homosexuality.
I don't want to discuss heterosexuality and homosexuality or the comparisons between the two at this early age, and they made it very clear that they've decided to introduce this to young children, and they were willing to do it behind the backs of parents and without opt-out.
Let me show you what's going to be happening around here over the next few weeks.
I was very worried. Not only was my mind racing, wondering what could possibly have already taken place and what their plans were to accelerate these discussions and presentations to our 5-year-old son.
We're going to be putting more educational materials like this in every classroom.
Indeed, this is now something they're going to be rolling out more and more. So after we fully understood what they planned to do with the children, we went to the principal.
I wanted to catch you before you leave and let you know that we both decided that we still want Jake opted out of these lessons.
And we'd like to have parental notification in advance if something like this should come up again.
I'm afraid we can't do that.
They would not accommodate at all. We had one final meeting at Estabrook Elementary School with the principal and the director of education.
There's only 2 months left until school is over.
All we're asking is for you to make an exception for one child. Just one child.
All right. That sounds reasonable. I think we can do that.
Well, thank you.
We just need to speak to the superintendent. I think we can work something out.
When she told us that accommodation may be possible just for the end of the year, we were very happy.
So at that point, I left the meeting, and Dave continued to stay in the meeting.
And as I was sitting there, I thought, finally, we're getting some accommodation. Who are we talking about here? We're talking about my child. I'm not talking about the rest of the school. We didn't say never do this. We said when you do it, as they stated they would, notify us first, and we want the option to opt out if we don't think he's ready for that. What I didn't realize was they weren't actually taking that extra time to accommodate. They were formulating another plan. They were keeping me there by leaving me with this promise and calling the police.
It looks like we're getting somewhere.
Really?
See you there?
Yes, officer, that's him over there.
Mr. Parker, I need to have a word with you.
When I saw the police come in, I thought to myself, I cannot believe they've done this to me.
You gotta be kidding me.
Getting arrested today is not going to help your cause either.
My only cause is to be a good father. I want my son opted out, and I'm not leaving here until they agree to do that.
When I was let out and put in the police car, I thought to myself, how far are they willing to go to deny us our parental rights? There needs to be some kind of protection of our parental rights.
Unbelievable.
Any form of authority which undermines the interaction and the guidance of a parent for their child has to be stopped. Parents need some form of protection because this type of thing is happening more and more and more.
If you think the David Parker case is an isolated incident, you try it. If you have a child in public school, you go down and make your voice be heard and see what happens.
There has been a slow degradation of parental rights. They have slowly dictated that they have more control within the schools than you do within the home.
The way this has come about is this idea that once a child is dropped off at a school, they enter the doors of that school, that then the parental rights evaporate. And that parent has no say over what their child will be taught, what their child will be exposed to.
What we've seen over the last 40 to 50 years is continual legislative and judicial overreach going into areas that we never thought they would reach into.
The government has a role, but it's not the role of a partner. It's the role of a backstop. If you abuse your kids, if you neglect your kids, and they have evidence of that, the government moves in, and they should move in those circumstances. But when they treat all of us as if we're child abusers, that's absolutely outrageous, and we can't stand for it.
Karl Marx said that in order to establish a perfect socialist state, you have to destroy the family. You have to substitute the government and its authority for parental authority in the rearing of children.
If this situation isn't bad enough, we now face an even greater threat to parental rights that will forever change the role of the family as we know it. This new challenge comes in the form of an international treaty called the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, also known as the UNCRC or the CRC.
On November 20, 1989, the United Nations adopted the Convention of the Rights of the Child, the CRC. The treaty was designed with 4 core principles in mind: non-discrimination, the best interest of the child, rights to life, survival and development, and respect for the views of children.
It is frustrating that the U.S. is the only country that has not approved this, and we certainly hope that progress can soon be made.
At first glance, the UNCRC appears to promote the rights of children. Interestingly, the USA is the only country that hasn't ratified the treaty. So what's holding us back?
Some people think there is nothing wrong with the treaty because it is there supposedly to protect children. But there are parts of the treaty that are very, very dangerous. For example, one says that any government action involving children and parents must be made in the best interest of the child. The second provision says that a child's view should be taken into consideration side by side with a parent's, and that the child's view should be given due consideration. And this is especially true as the child gets older. What this means is anytime there's a conflict or a dispute between a child and the parent, a government bureaucrat gets to decide what is in the best interest of the child instead of the parent deciding what is in the best interest of the child.
One of the things the Convention on the Rights of the Child states is that children have the right to access any media or any information that they want. It also means that a predator has the ability to access children through the internet, and that parents have no right to protect their children. So this treaty that purports to give rights to children really makes children more vulnerable to being exploited and abused.